Okay. Hi everyone, it's Warren here from Warren's Team Talk. I'm on Diesel's channel tonight, Diesel Arsenal, because I'm going to be talking to you about the phenomena which is ghosts. So this was one that was asked for by quite a few people the last time I was on the channel. So that's what we're going to talk about tonight. I can see that Joanne's in the chat. I know this is a subject that she's really, really passionate about. So I hope you're going to enjoy this, Joanne. I hope you really, really do. I've spent a few days working on this, so let's hope it all really goes well. I've got notes that I'm going to refer to because there's quite a lot of information that I want to go through. But I hope you're going to like it. And there's a Daryl Denton. Emerson Royale plays like a ghost. He's not a footballer, that's for sure, he says. Right, okay. Fair enough, Daryl. But I hope you're going to enjoy the show in any case. And Joanne says, Warren, hello, my lovelies. This should be good. Yeah, I'm hoping so. So just to start off, right, what I'm going to do, first of all, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to talk about. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go through the different types of spirits and ghosts that there are. Then I'm going to talk about how spirits and ghosts communicate with us and us with them. And then I'm going to talk about ghosts in popular culture. And then I'm going to talk about famous ghost stories and incidents. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of the phenomena. And then I'm going to talk about ghosts and science, such things like, and different things that people think could be going on and why it is that people are seeing or experiencing this phenomena. So let's give that a go and see what happens. And as I'm going along, if you've got anything you want to ask or mention or bring up or talk about, just throw it in the chat. And if I see it, then I'll talk to you about it. So let's move on to the next slide. And those two, just to mention, those two things you can see in the main picture there on the right-hand side. That's the logo for Diesel Arsenal. He's the guy who owns this channel. And then my logo is in the bottom right-hand corner. That's the Warren's Team Talk logo. I have got a YouTube channel. On that channel, I don't talk about these things. I talk about football in general and also Arsenal. So if you're interested in football, please feel free to come and pay me a visit and subscribe to my channel. And then you'll be able to see what I get up to and whatnot. So yeah, what's the day today? Tuesday. I'll be doing another stream on Thursday, and also on Friday night I'm going on Del Boy Gunner TV's channel, and we're going to talk about Arsenal during the 1996-97 season. So that should be interesting. And Diesel Arsenal, he's a really great guy. He's really passionate about Arsenal. And as you can see, he likes talking about all sorts of things, not just football, which is why I'm on here, because he's really interested, as I am, and very passionate about the paranormal. So, yeah, please make sure you check his channel out and go and subscribe to him and find out all about him and what he does, because it's a great, great channel. He did a stream last night, I think it was, and it was excellent. It really, really was. I really, really enjoyed that. So yeah, go and check him out. And Steve RFC7 is in the chat, and he says, big up. Hi mate, how you doing? I hope you're well. Nice to see you. Right, so let's move on. Right, so we're going to look at what the different types of ghosts are. Let me just maximize this screen a sec so I can see what I'm saying. So, no, hold on, I'll leave it like that, I think. So the different types of ghosts, what we're going to do, It's widely regarded that the spirit of a deceased person, that person that persists in the material world, i.e. as a ghost, is regarded as an unnatural or undesirable state of affairs. And the idea of ghosts is associated with the reaction of fear, and the fear of ghosts also remains an integral part of the modern ghost story. Gothic horror and other horror fiction dealing with the supernatural. So the fear of ghosts has been a long-standing reaction from the living towards the dead, even when those ghosts are of dead relatives or recently departed relatives. It still provokes a strong fear reaction. So for me, that's quite interesting, the way that happens. And there are many types of ghosts and spirits, and these are the main ones. So there is the interactive personality ghost. This is this one here that's on this slide here. This is the most common type found. Typically, they appear in a form similar to when they were alive, and it's not uncommon for them to walk, talk, and occasionally acknowledge the living. So that's one that most people see, obviously. And Steve at RFC says, I'm doing good. I was at bowling today and played pool. Funny. Boy beside me put pool ball in the hole. Good win versus West Ham. Yeah, it was, mate. David Dundas, morning peeps. Steve at RFC says, I heard Ronaldo staying. It will be good seeing him in a Europe League. If Arsenal beat Leeds for top four, should be secure. If Liverpool beat Spurs, yeah, maybe. Joanne says there's more scary people on earth than in the afterlife. Yeah, that's probably true. Carl Wolf says, good evening, Warren. I hope you're well, mate. Looking forward to this, mate. Good. I'm glad you are. And it's nice to see you. And it's nice to see everyone else who's in the chat. We've got Daryl Denton, Joanne Smith, Steve at RFC, David Dundas, and Carl Wolf. So big up to you all. If you haven't already subscribed, all of you, to Diesel Arsenal's channel, please make sure you do that. It's a fantastic channel. It really, really is. He's a top guy. And he does loads of really cool streams about Arsenal and life in general. He talks about films and dating and all sorts of things, not just about football and Arsenal. So it's really cool. Right. So there's also a type of spirit called the funnel ghost, which we can see here in this picture. The funnel ghosts, these are typically seen in old buildings or historic places and can often be seen in photographs. They will often have a person, they will often leave a person feeling unsettled and after seeing the unknown phantom captured in the photographs. So it can be quite a disturbing phenomena for someone to see. And that's normally how it would present himself, as you see it in that picture there. So the mist, fog, wisp ghosts. Now, mist, fog, wisp ghosts, that is a typical example of a mist ghost. And they're similar in some respects to funnel ghosts, but these phantoms tend to leave the spot or area they are haunting feeling cold when they appear. They can haunt old houses and be seen outside in the evening or at night or just about anywhere. Now, wisp ghosts, this is a phenomenon that I first come across when I was a kid. And there used to be, I don't know if any of you remember, but we're going to mention this a little bit later. But there used to be a TV program on children's TV called Will-O the Wisp. And wisps, like the specific types of ghosts that normally you'd be able to see in forests and places like that. And it's also recently been in a film. There was a film about a young girl who grew up in the Highlands of Scotland. I can't remember the name of the film. Forgive me for that. But there were wisp ghosts in that film as well. So it's quite an interesting one, and it's been that obviously that story's been around for a while. So the Poltergeist. Now, the Poltergeist. Many of you will probably be aware of the film that was back in, I think it was the 80s. Absolutely terrifying series of films. I think it was 3 of them altogether. These are the most famous type of ghosts, as well as the rarest. The Poltergeist is always the most worrying and unsettling because it is known for its malevolent or sometimes even dangerous behaviour. So they've got a tendency to be quite disruptive, mischievous. They'll throw things around, move things around, stuff like that, and make a lot of noise. And it can be really disturbing and upsetting. Now, any of you who have seen the Poltergeist films will know about the Poltergeist. Perfect example of what Poltergeist activity is like. And it can drive people out of their homes and all sorts of things. A good friend of mine, he didn't have a poltergeist, but he had a ghost in his house that they used to keep playing music, and it would be like sort of music from the 20s and 30s, and it always came from one room, and it was like quite unsettling. But they got used to it, and it didn't drive them out of their home, and it wasn't disturbing in any way. They'd never felt threatened by it, but some people can get really badly threatened by them. And Joanne says, oh, yes, the Pink Fairy and Will-O'-the-Wisp. Yeah, that's right. I remember that, the Pink Fairy. The Will-O'-the-Wisp has an angry telly in it. Yes, it's called Evil Edna, Joanne. That's absolutely right. And Lainey and Ben are good to watch. They have Poltergeist. I've never ever seen that. If you could send me some information about that, Joanne, that'd be wonderful. And Taib Hussain says the demon head teacher. Now, I've got an interesting story. Reminds me, up the road from here, there's an old building, which is it's a adult education building where adult education goes on. And apparently, that building is haunted because the building used to belong to an old school, and there is allegedly the headmistress haunts this building, and she's terrified a few people in her time, even when she was alive, because my mum remembered her, and she said she was a really terrifying woman, and she's terrified a few people working in and attending this adult education centre, apparently. David Dunder says, my social life is haunted by ghosts. Oh, God, David. I'm sorry to hear that, mate. Okay, so that's a little bit about Poltergeist. Now, ghost orbs. Now, this is quite interesting. Ghost orbs. Now, you see in the picture there's like some, you can see some sort of balls of light. There's one particular one, it's quite a large one, it's in the middle. But these, for those who don't know, they're like sort of balls of light that move around independently of each other, and it's quite an interesting phenomena. And what it is, it says mostly these are photographic manifestations of ghosts, but typically they appear as blue, white, or shiny spheres. And true orbs almost always move in a fanciful way, such as veering or crisscrossing across each other. I was watching something on YouTube the other night, and they were doing an investigation, and you could see all these orbs like moving around really, as I've just mentioned, like veering around, crissing and crossing, and all sorts of things. It was really quite interesting. And it's commonly held belief that these orbs are the souls of people, or maybe even animals, traveling from one place to another. So, yeah, the belief is that they are manifestations of the departed. So, if you see them, just talk to them. And Taib says, well, I'm back in 2016, 17. I came back from work one night and I went straight to the kitchen. Then I heard something throw a shoe from the landing upstairs. It fell right onto the wood flooring. Yeah, that must have been quite terrifying. I'm sure. But yeah, I can well believe that, mate, because this is the sort of thing that happens. Orbs, Joanne says, orbs are spirits manifesting. They come in all colours, shapes and sizes. I've had an orb in the shape of my selenite stick. Okay, that's interesting. Del Boy Gunner's in, and he says, if I seen them orbs, I'd be bleeding. Look at it. Yeah, I don't blame you, mate. I don't blame you. Because a lot, it can be really terrifying for people. Right. So, what we're going to do now, we're going to talk about communication with ghosts and spirits. So let's just move on. Whoops. Right, let's move on. So communication with ghosts and spirits, okay? So in this one, we're going to talk about psychic mediums, the Ouija board, pendulums, electronic voice phenomena, seances, and animals and dogs. Now, so communication with ghosts and spirits. So in here, this picture here, hold on just a sec. Yeah, so that picture there is like a very common way that people would communicate with ghosts. They'd meet up in a group of people, sit around a table, connecting hands. I don't quite understand the science behind it, but it was very popular at the turn of the 19th and 20th century. And typically, one person, the main person, would be talking to the spirits and conveying messages to the rest of the group. They would pass messages backwards and forwards to the spirit world. And that was why the person would be known as a medium, because they're acting as a medium between the living and the dead, so to speak. And let's move on. So this here is a depiction of a psychic medium, and this psychic medium, in the background you can see a fella stood behind her. That was obviously supposed to be someone from the spirit world. She is talking to a client. They come to see her because they want to find out about a departed relative, I would imagine. And this person has come through and they're passing messages on to the person who is her client. So they, in the same way that those people sat around the table, this would more typically be on a 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 basis. And she would be conveying messages to and from the spirit world to the people, the person from the living world, and then passing on messages backwards and forwards to the spirit world. So she's acting like a go-between. That's why it's called a medium. So I hope this is all making sense. By the way, if there's anything you're not if I'm not making sense, please tell me, and I'll try a different way to explain it. When Taib says, when people claim to get in contact with the dead, then that is a myth. That's a myth. Okay, mate, no problem. What do you think's going on then, Taib, when they're having these experiences, mate? Joanne Smith says, I have a REM pod and K2 meter pendulum and all manner of crystals. Excellent, Joanne. That's really good to know. Craig Malloy says, big up, Warren. Big up yourself, mate. Same to you, fellas. Good to see you. So let's move on. Now, this is one that I find quite disturbing. This is something called a Ouija board, and I would strongly advise you, under no circumstances, touch one of these boards. Okay? Don't touch them. Don't let anyone you know touch one. This is only because the experience that I had with it and things I've heard about it. I believe that it's an extremely, unless you're trained and you know what you're doing, it can be a really, really dangerous tool to use to contact the spirit world. Because when I was at school, a group of us tried to use one, and we had a glass on it, and the glass was moving around, and then just without warning, the glass flew up in the air and threw itself against the window and smashed. With that, the rest of us just legged it out of the room and wouldn't go back in the room. It was absolutely terrifying. So this is a Ouija board. Typically, what would happen, you'd have like a little device. I'm just going to show you the device. So you see there the people, there's a group of people holding on to something, and the idea is that you're all holding on to it, but you don't have power over it. Basically, the spirit is supposed to move the object around the Ouija board, and they use the symbols on the board to communicate. So you can see there, they've got all the letters from A to Z and numbers 1 to 0, with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. in between, and then a yes, no, and goodbye. So the spirit would use this board to communicate with the living. So they'd be asked questions, and then they would use the board to be able to give their answers. And like I said, if you're ever tempted to use one, please think very carefully about it, because I found it absolutely terrifying, and I've heard reports that it can be very, very dangerous, because it can sum up very dark spirits and evil spirits and stuff like that. So you need to be really, really careful. So Carl says, Warren, I'm heading to my dad's to watch the game. I'll watch this when I get home. Brilliant stuff. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I hope you enjoy the match. Because Liverpool are playing Villarreal tonight, aren't they? Joanne Smith says, spirit balls, you have to be professional to use one of them. Otherwise, you can stay away. You can bring in bad spirits. Exactly. So this isn't a joke, people, right? You can seriously summon up all sorts of really, really bad spirits with using this. Craig Malloy says, my mum used a Ouija board, and she said she never ever do it again. It was frightening. Yeah, exactly, mate. And I wouldn't either after the experience I had. Taib Hussain says, big up. Carney AFC 84, the good old Ouija board. Yeah, personally, I don't think there's anything particularly good about it, but still. Had some fucked up nights with that thing as a kid. Yeah, just don't mess around with it, man. It's not good. David Dunder says, not going near one again. I watched Supernatural. I watched Supernatural. Big up Sam and Dean. Yeah, I didn't see that, but I can imagine it was pretty scary because it is, like I say, it's a very, very dangerous thing to be messing around with, and I wouldn't advise anyone to do it. Yeah, so that's the Ouija board, and yeah, like I say, it's a tool a tool for people to be able to communicate backwards and forwards with the spirit world. And pendulums, again, it's very similar to a Ouija board, but the pendulum would sort of go backwards and forwards over this board, and they would use it to be able to communicate with the spirit world. I've had no experiences of this myself, but yeah, as you can see, there's like letters all around it from the alphabet, months of the year, letters, days of the week, all sorts of things. So it's just another tool that can be used to contact the spirit world. And then next one. Now, this is quite interesting. I find this really fascinating. It's called electronic voice phenomena. I don't know if any of you are aware of this, but basically what it is, it's when people like take a tape recorder or something and they leave it running, and then when later they then play it back, and then they can hear voices that weren't there originally. So like you can get recordings of spirits talking on the tape and things like that. So it's a very, very useful tool. So yeah, and it gets some really interesting results. And I've seen it used a few times in a few paranormal investigations, and it gave very, very interesting, very good results. And yeah, it's absolutely fascinating how that works. Now, so here we have a seance, and this is what I was talking about earlier. And basically, you have one person who acts as the main communicator between the living and the dead. Now, in this picture, we can see a group of people sat around a table, and then there appears to be like a ghostly figure who's come towards the table, and they're trying to communicate with the people or one of the people that are sat on the table. And it's very important when they're at this table that they don't break the circle, because otherwise they will lose communication with the spirit world, I believe. And I'm sure she won't mind. There's a lady in the chat by the name of Joanne. She's very interested in this subject as well. So, Joanne, if I'm misinforming the chat, please jump in and say, Warren, that's not quite true. Please don't be worried about doing that, because it'll really, really help. But there's always one person who is a trained like medium who will act as a focal point for the spirit. The spirit will come to that person, and then they will pass on the messages to the people around the table, and then the people around the table will then pass back messages to the spirit. So that's really how it works. And David says, my friend Andy lives in Brighton in the UK and belongs to a group that goes to haunted spots in the UK and documents findings. England has lots of haunted houses. It does, mate, because I live in England as well, and there's quite a few haunted places around here. And I live in Kent, and Kent, where I live in Kent, it was very popular with Henry VIII, and there's a lot of buildings from his period near where I live. And yeah, it's there's been a lot of reports of paranormal activity in his castles and the areas around where he lived and spent time. Joanne Smith says, I've used my pendulum without a board. It's great. I felt the vibration from the pendulum. Yeah, and the pendulum is really cool because it's also, people also use it in crop circles as well. Crop circles is an interesting phenomena. If you want me to, I can talk about that one week as well. And Clem says, all right, Warren, mate, good stream. Thanks. You're very welcome. It's an absolute pleasure. And I really enjoy doing these streams, I have to say. So now we're coming on to the next one, which is about animals, particular dogs and ghosts and spirits. Now, it's widely known that dogs are able to see spirits, and they will react to the spirit. So if they see a spirit, they may become excited, or they may start barking or get angry, just they would in the same way they would if they saw a person. If it was a good person, they may get happy and become very excitable, whereas if it's a bad person, they might start growling and backing away. So it's a very interesting phenomenon. And typically, humans may see a dog go into a room and start growling as though there's something that bad there, and they may not know why. And that's potentially why it's happening. It's because they can see a spirit or so on and so forth. So it's a very interesting, for me, phenomena because, like I say, it's widely known that dogs in particular, I'm not sure about cats, but dogs certainly can see spirits. So that is, for me, that's quite interesting. So what we're going to do about now, what we're going to talk about now is ghosts throughout history. Now, this is very, very interesting subject. Well, it is for me anyway. So there have been reports of ghosts seemingly for as long as humans have been on planet Earth. They go back almost since time began. And there are many references to ghosts in the Mesopotamian regions, the regions of Sumer, Babylon, Assyria, and other early states in the region. So as you can see, these places I've just mentioned there, they're at the cradle, they're in the cradle of civilizations on this planet. So, and there's reports coming from those civilizations of ghosts even then. It was widely believed by these peoples that ghosts were thought to be created at the time of death, taking on the memory and personality of the person that had died. And they traveled to the netherworld where they were assigned a position and led an existence similar in some ways to that of the living. Relatives of the dead were expected to make offerings of food and drink to the dead to ease their conditions. If they did not, the ghosts could inflict misfortune and illness on the living. So it seems like it's a bit of a punishment for those left behind if they don't treat them properly when they move on. Joanne says, Warren, I will send you a video link from last year, how my mum came through to me. Yeah, please do, Joanne. I'd love to see that. It'd be lovely. Taïb says, Warren, there was a woman that died in France, and before she died, she asked people to go and stay the night next to her grave. 2 people volunteered, and they went through the worst experience. Mate, that must have been absolutely horrific. Yeah, those poor people. It must have been awful. Just quickly, I've just remembered a story about dogs. There's a really famous ghost story from Scotland that I remember my dad telling me when I was a kid. And it refers to Robbie Burns. And Robbie Burns had a pet dog. And when he died, the dog used to go and visit his grave every single night and sit on his grave. And he wouldn't leave. He'd stay sleeping on the grave and everything. So, and it's believed that he would be able to see the late Robbie Burns laying in the grave and stuff like that. So that's another interesting story about dogs and the spirit world. Where were we? So in ancient Egypt, there was a widespread belief in ghosts, where it was believed that the soul and the spirit were believed to exist after death, with the ability to assist or harm the living, and there was also the possibility of a second death, which I find a bit odd, but there you go. And then over the next 2,500 years, these beliefs constantly evolved, and many of these beliefs were recorded in hieroglyph inscriptions, papyrus scrolls, and tomb paintings. And the Egyptian Book of the Dead compiles some of these beliefs from different peoples of ancient Egyptian history. Now, archaic and classical Greece. So ghosts appeared in Homer's Odyssey and Iliad, and which they were described as vanishing in a vapor and gibbering and whining into the earth. Homer's ghosts had little interaction with the world of the living, and periodically they were called upon to provide advice or prophecy, but they do not appear to be particularly feared. But by the 5th century BC, classical Greek ghosts have become haunting, frightening creatures who could work to either good or evil purposes. So you can see they're starting there to sort of get a bit of a fear of them, and there wasn't always a force for good. So that's probably where people started to become fearful of them, and also as far back as the ghosts that were reported in Sumer and Babylon, where if they didn't comply with their wishes, they would cause problems for the living. Now, the ancient Romans believed a ghost could be used to exact revenge on an enemy by scratching a curse on a piece of lead or pottery and placing it into a grave. And Plutarch, I think that's his name, Plutarch, in the 1st century AD, described the haunting of baths at Chianira by the ghost of a murdered man. The ghost's loud and frightful groans caused the people of the town to seal up the doors of the building. So it was that bad that they had to seal the place up so they could try and stop it, because they didn't want to hear it. And then in the New Testament, according to a book in the book of Luke, following his resurrection, Jesus was forced to persuade the disciples that he was not a ghost, and some versions of the Bible use the term spirit. Basically, what happened was, similarly, Jesus' followers at first believed he was a ghost, a spirit, when they saw him walking on water, and he had to persuade them that he wasn't a ghost and that he has in fact been resurrected. And following his resurrection, where are we? Sorry. When they first saw him, they become terrified and thought he was a ghost, and some of them didn't even recognize him, and he had to persuade them, no, I am resurrected. So I thought that was quite an interesting story and slant on it. Now, where else are we? I've lost my place here. Hold on a sec. So in the Middle Ages, we move forward now to the Middle Ages. Ghosts were reported in medieval Europe, tended to fall into 2 categories, which are the souls of the dead, or demons, and the souls of the dead return for a specific purpose, but demonic ghosts existed only to torment or tempt the living. The living could tell them apart by demanding their purpose in the name of Jesus Christ. the soul of a dead person would divulge its mission, while a demonic ghost would be banished at the sound of the holy name. So, yeah, that must have been quite terrifying, I would imagine. But then, as soon as they mentioned the holy name, it would gone. So, the European Renaissance to Romanticism. The Renaissance magic took a revived interest in the occult, including communication with the dead. The child ballad Sweet William's Ghost recounts the story in 1868, recounts the story of a ghost returning to his fiancée, begging her to free him from his promise to marry her. He cannot marry her because he is dead, but her refusal would mean his damnation. This reflects a popular British belief that the dead haunted their lovers if they took up with a new love without some form of release. I've never heard that myself. I'm British and I've never ever heard that one before, that if you were married or something like that, and when you departed, that if you didn't get released from your partner, that you could then end up being damned or whatever. I've not heard that one before. Now, modern period of Western culture, spiritualism. Spiritualism is a belief system or religion, and it is a belief that God is at the core. The belief of God is at its core, but with a distinguishing feature that its believers believe that spirits of the dead are residing in the spirit world, can be contacted by mediums. Or mediums, when I say mediums, I mean like go-betweens, who can provide information about the afterlife or give advice or reassurance to the living. Spiritualism developed in the United States and reached its peak in growth in membership from the 1840s to the 1920s, especially in English-speaking countries with more than 8 million followers in the United States and Europe. A version of spiritualism known as Spiritism is found in continental Europe and Latin America. So, now let's move on now and look at ghosts and science. Now, the physician John Femer wrote an essay entitled Towards a Theory of Apparitions in 1813, in which he argued that sightings of ghosts were the results of optical illusions. Later, a French physician, whose name I am unable to pronounce, and I'm not going to insult him by trying to, published on hallucinations or the rational history of apparitions, dreams, ecstasy, magnetism, and somnambulism in 1845, in which he claimed sightings of ghosts were the result of hallucinations. Joanne Smith says Deborah Davis did a good podcast last week about the Manchester canals, and she believes some evil entity killed the people there. I don't doubt it for 1 minute, Joanne, especially if it happened in it was in a canal where there was a tunnel or stuff like that, because if you've ever been inside one of those tunnels that goes through a canal, they look absolutely terrifying because there's hardly any space to walk along the side, and it's dark and it's dank, so I can well believe that. Science has put forward many explanations for what it believes are rational explanations for where are we? Yeah, so science has put forward many rational explanations for what it believes are rational explanations for ghosts, and these include limitations of human perception, air pressure changes in a home causing doors to slam, humidity changes causing boards to creak, condensation in electrical connection causing intermittent behavior such as lights from passing car reflected through a window at night and the such. So science has many different explanations for the phenomena of ghosts, but pareidolia, which is an innate tendency to recognize patterns in random perceptions, is what some skeptics believe cause people to believe that they have seen ghosts. It is believed that reports of ghosts being seen out of the corner of the eye may be accounted for by the sensitivity of human peripheral vision. It's also widely believed by scientists that peripheral vision can easily mislead, especially late at night when the brain is tired, and more likely to misinterpret sights and sounds. And Benjamin Radford from the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, an author of the 2017 book Investigating Ghosts, the Scientific Search for Spirits, writes that ghost hunting is the world's most popular paranormal pursuit, yet to date ghost hunters cannot agree on what a ghost is or offer proof that they exist. It's all speculation and guesswork. He writes that it would be useful and important to distinguish between types of spirits and apparitions. Until then, it's merely parlour game, distracting amateur ghost hunters from the task at hand. I mean, to be honest with you, I think that's all a bit harsh, because as you've seen, it's like documented cases where people have seen things and have been able to record stuff. I think it's a bit harsh to just write it off like that. So I don't necessarily agree with him about that. I mean, obviously, it's very good to be able to back up things with evidence and whatnot, and a lot of people have been able to do that. But the problem with science is that it needs evidence for everything, and it's not always possible to do that in this subject. According to research in animalistic psychology, visions of ghosts may arise from hypnagogic hallucinations, walking dreams, experiencing the transitional states to and from sleep. And some researchers, such as Michael Persinger of Laurentian University, Canada, have speculated that changes in geomagnetic fields created, e.g. by tectonic stresses in the Earth crust or solar activity, could stimulate the brain's temporal lobes and produce many of the experiences associated with hauntings. Sound is thought to be another cause of supposed sightings. Richard Lord and Richard Wiseman have concluded that infrasound can cause humans to experience bizarre feelings in rooms such as anxiety, extreme sorrow, or feeling of being watched, or even the chills. Now, that sounds an interesting idea, and I'd like to see a bit more research on that, because I think it could be a really interesting thing to think about. But yeah, so moving on. People who experience sleep paralysis often report seeing ghosts during their experiences, and some neuroscientists have recently proposed neurological theories for why people hallucinate ghosts during sleep paralysis. And then there are also other alternative theories about what people are experiencing. Some of these theories include interdimensional travelers, time travelers, and extraterrestrial visitations. Now, I'm going to talk a little bit about visitations a little bit later. But what we're going to do now, we're going to look at some of the most haunted places in the UK. So this is what this is all about. I'm going to go through them some of them one by one. I think I've done about 6, something like that. So the first one, Aston Hall in the West Midlands. This is a red brick manor house, and it has racked up quite a few ghosts since it was completed in the 1630s. The very first tenant, Sir Thomas Holt, allegedly murdered his cook and the ghost of his daughter, who he locked away for 16 years until her death. It's also said to wander the halls alongside Holt's houseboy and a green lady thought to be his housekeeper. And it says, keep your eyes peeled for ghostly royalist soldiers too. So I took this from a website, so that's why that bit's crept in. But keep your eyes peeled for royalist soldiers. So there's also a hole in Aston Hall's staircase made by a cannonball when the house was under siege during the English Civil War. So, yeah, that's quite interesting. Now, this next place. Now, those of you who are fans of a TV show called Most Haunted will probably remember one of the most notorious TV shows that they ever produced was filmed on location at this place. It's called Pendle Hill. And before I talk about that, I'm just going to look at some of these comments. Taib Hussain says, Judge's Walk in Hampstead Heath is apparently haunted. It's a narrow, winding road. Yeah, it's not just buildings that are haunted. And I think we need to remember that it's not just buildings. It can be fields, it can be footpaths, it can be open areas, hills, anywhere that can have you can have experiences in. Joanne says, Warren, as I told you yesterday, my phone called you on its own. I wasn't near my phone when it did it. It just I just looked at my phone and it was calling you on Instagram. Now that is a bit bizarre because that's not the only person that's happened to. And Joanne says, Parandolia is fascinating. Now, I haven't really looked into it that much, Joanne, but from what I read when I was doing this, it really looks it. Joanne is a few too many. Joanne, a few too many wines, says David Dundas. David, that's really funny. Right, okay. When my mum passed, I used to put her casket on the sofa when I was watching the soaps, and the TV turned over on its own to EastEnders. And was your mum an EastEnders fan, Joanne? Anyway, so we're going to talk about Pendle Hill. Now, Pendle Hill is a really, really haunted place in Lancashire, and it got made famous. Well, it's been famous for many reasons, but one particular was there was a TV show called Most Haunted, and Most Haunted used to have a team of people go out and do investigations on site. They used to take various pieces of scientific equipment, mediums, stuff like that, to try and investigate what was going on. Now, so let me just tell you a bit more about Pendle Hill. Looming over hamlets and farmland in rural Lancashire, Pendle Hill is a properly stunning spot, but it's got a dark past. In 1612, 10 local people known as the Pendle Witches were executed nearby after a trial at Lancaster Castle. Some say the hill is haunted by the spirits of those who lost their lives. And there have been a number of alleged sightings over the years. whatever you believe, it's an undeniably atmospheric place. And it is. And I remember that show that they did on Most Haunted, that this place was absolutely terrifying. I don't know if anyone else has seen it, but it really was horrific. I mean, basically they went into this shack on Pendle Hill, and the medium was talking about the spirits he could see coming in, and there was all these witches, and oh mate, it was terrifying. Anyway, let's move on, because I'm going to get freaked out again. Then Malcolm County Park, Wesker Morgan. So Malcolm County Park and Wesker Morgan is in South Wales. It's a triple threat. It is home to the ruined Capel Mare Arborin, where the presence of unwelcoming ancient monks has been felt. A big Gothic castle stalked by the spirit of a rageful and unjustly murdered gamekeeper, and the ghosts of Victorian children, with a penchant for moving objects and disembodied laughter, and a blacksmith who walks the castle grounds, plus the ruins of the 12th century Markham Abbey, which are enough on their own to make the hairs on the back of your neck stand up. It certainly is, because it's all these different spirits hanging out in this place. I mean, the place must be absolutely electric with all that spiritual energy that's going on there. So the next one is, what's this one? Manningtree in Essex. Modern witches might want to steer clear of the Essex town of Manningtree. It's where the self-professed witchfinder general Matthew Hopkins lived in the 1600s. His efforts resulted in the deaths of hundreds of women in East Anglia's witch trials. If you don't feel the ancient anger of the persecuted there, you could spot the ghosts of Hopkins himself. Sightings of him have happened during full moons in the neighbouring village of Mistley by the pond, where he famously drowned so many innocent people. Yeah, because I don't know if you are aware, but what used to happen with witches, when they used to have trials, normally what they would do, they would tie their hands and legs together and put loads of rocks in their pockets and on them, throw them into the river. If they sunk and drowned, they were innocent, but if they floated, they were guilty. So either way, they were going to die, because if they floated and didn't drown, it would be claimed that they were a witch, so they'd be executed and burnt at the stake. And if they sunk and so on and drowned to death, then that would be claimed, they weren't a witch, which wouldn't really help them because they'd be dead anyway. So that's what used to happen with a lot of the times with the witch trials. So it was really brutal, really evil. If you got accused of being a witch, that was it. More or less 9 times out of 10, it was game over for you, really. So Skirrid Mountain Inn in Monmouthshire. Plenty of pubs have grisly tales to tell, but this ancient boozer in the Brecon Beacons has more than most. Punters reported hearing slamming doors, loud footsteps and whispered voices. Legend has it that it's because the building was once used as a court of law, and hundreds of defendants were put to death in the inn itself. A noose now hangs in the historic bar, in case you need a reminder of its creepy history with your pint. Yeah, lovely. That'd be nice, wouldn't it? Sitting there and seeing a bloody noose light hanging up in the pub. Not the sort of thing you really want, is it? To be quite frank. Well, I wouldn't like it anyway, that's for sure. So my ghost stories. Okay, so I'm going to tell you a few things from my my life about different things that I've experienced. Now, this pub here on the right hand side is called the Kentish Yeoman. It's now closed and boarded up, and it's in the. I think it's even been demolished now, actually. And there's a cottage standing on its site. But when it was a pub, frequently people would see a laughing cavalier. So those of you who aren't aware, like laughing cavalier is from the when England became a republic for a few times under Oliver Cromwell. And they're the guys that used to walk around with this like big white round thing around their necks, like a fashion item. But this guy, he just appears in the window of the bar and he's laughing. So, like I said earlier, there's where I live. There's quite a few places that've got ghosts and whatnot. So yeah, that used to happen there on a regular basis. My mum saw it on one occasion. I never saw it, but she happened to see it. And that's just down the road from, well, not just down the road, it's probably about 2 miles away from where I live, I guess. Then St Paul's Cathedral. Now, I'm sure you're all aware of St Paul's Cathedral. It's in central London. And I went there once with my ex-wife. And we went in there and she had the most awful experience. She became really unwell. We had to go outside. As soon as she stepped outside, she felt fine. And apparently this is not an uncommon phenomena to occur. Now, she's Catholic, and we're convinced it had something to do with the fact that she's Catholic. I might be wrong, but I felt fine, and she wouldn't have been the first Catholic person to go in there and have this happen to her. And she's quite receptive to ghosts and stuff like that. So yeah, that was a really unnerving experience, to be quite honest. Now, Sundridge Hospital. Now, this is another place that's near to where I live. And it's an old workhouse. Back in the day, like at the turn of the 20th century, workhouses were places where homeless people would have been sent to be housed, or if they were unemployed and didn't have a job, they'd go there and have to work to get food and clothing and stuff like that. And in that picture, that is the workhouse. Then it later became, after the welfare state was introduced, it then got turned into a hospital. Now, my mum worked there late in her later life, and she worked there nights, and she said she'd be sitting there on the ward in a chair when all the patients were asleep, and she'd be like reading the paper or reading a book or something and having a cup of coffee or something like that, chatting with her colleagues, and she'd frequently get a tickle on her nose. And she frequently heard voices, had this strong urge that she had to go to a particular part of the building. And this particular part of the building, it turned out, was where a relative of ours had died. So that was quite strange. Now, this house there, you can see the one in the middle. That was where I spent a lot of my early childhood. I lived there till Cup final, actually. FA Cup final day in 1977. I moved out of that house. So up and between the ages of about 4, I think we were 4 when I moved in. I lived there for about 6 years. And whilst living there, I had a lot of experiences. I would do a lot of sleepwalking, and I would also walk around. I'd wake up in the middle of the night, see people stood by the side of my bed. Had no idea who these people were. Sometimes there were 2 people, sometimes there were 3, sometimes there was only 1, but they were unknown to me. None of these people that I saw, I knew them, and it would absolutely terrify me. So I used to just scream, pull the cover over my head, and just stay like that in my bed, and then pull the cover back over myself a little while, and they would be gone again. So it was absolutely terrifying for me. It really was. And when I spoke to my parents about it, they said, "Don't worry, it's fine. It's just your mind playing tricks on you. Don't worry about it." So, yeah. So that was some interesting stuff about ghosts from my experiences. And my mum had an experience in that house as well. After my gran died, her father came to visit her, who had also passed some years before. No, it was he. That was it. Let me get this right. My mum was visited by her father after he had passed, and he came to see her. And just after he passed, and he said, "Please look after your mum, because all this might be too much for her. She might not be able to cope with it." And then he just disappeared. So it was very, very, very strange. Very, very strange. So now, what we're going to do now, we're going to talk about ghosts in popular culture. Okay, so ghosts have appeared in stories and popular culture since the dawn of time, and I would like now to tell you about some of these, and also tell you about some of my favourite ones, favourite films and TV shows, which either are about ghosts or include ghosts in them, or look at ghosts as a phenomena. And what we got here, I just want to have a look at the chat and see if there's anything in here. Joanne says that she's a witch. Joanne, witches were treated terribly. Yeah, they were. It was absolutely awful. Hospitals are prime ground for ghosts. They are, because the amount of people that pass there. Joanne says that Adam and Eve's smallest pub in Norwich is haunted. And there's a little pub, St. Botham's, here in New Zealand. One of the rooms is haunted. Wow, that's really cool. And King Charles time. Yeah. So, yeah, they some interesting comments there. Thanks, guys. Keep them coming in. Keep them coming in. If I see them, I'll respond to them. Yeah. So, Joanne's right. Witches were women were back in the day, at the time of the witch trials and whatever, were treated terribly, and it was a really easy way for people to persecute women who they didn't particularly like or get on with, to accuse them of witchcraft, and invariably the person would end up dead. Simple as that. Clem says, Warren, my granddad had dogs who died, and he swore he saw them later in life. I don't disbelieve it, mate. I really don't. Stefan Hanging Tower, Romance and Gothic Writings. Got a ghost of my father and my old cat from the 90s. Occasionally hear a meow and he both have been seen. There you go. You see, animals come back as well. And CMO says, hi, Ron. I've done work for Jess's channel, gave him a new logo and channel art. If you want something like that, let me know. Thank you, my friend. I'll have a look at that and get in touch. Thank you very, very much. Diesel, when you watch this back later, if you're watching, you might want to check this guy out because he's got really good stuff, I believe. So if you're watching this later on playback, go and check him out because I think he does. Well, anyone who needs any channel art or anything like that, I've seen the stuff he's done with Jez's channel and it's absolutely superb. Anyway, so Charles Dickens. Let's go to the first one. Charles Dickens, A Christmas Carol. Now, I quite like this one. Now, this is a story of Ebenezer Scrooge, who is an elderly miser who is visited by the ghosts of his former business partner, Jacob Marley, and the spirits of Christmas past, present, and yet to come. After their visit, Scrooge is transformed into a kinder, gentler man. So, now what are we doing here? Yeah. Also, I don't know why I put that. Right, so let's go to the next one. So this guy is called Pliny the Younger, and he's from the Roman times. And long ago, as the 1st century AD, this great Roman author and statesman wrote in his letters about a spectre of an old man with a long beard, rattling chains, and was haunting his house in Athens. So yeah, I threw that one in because I thought it just shows how long back this phenomena goes. I mean, because when it was going on long before the Roman times as well. So let's go on to the next one. Then we've got Anne Boleyn. Anne Boleyn, I'm sure most of you are aware, Anne Boleyn was one of Henry's 6 wives, and she was one of the most frequent reported ghost sightings in England, and it dates back to the 16th century. Anne Boleyn, who was the 2nd wife of King Henry VIII and mother of Queen Elizabeth I, was executed at the Tower of London in May 1536 after being accused of witchcraft, treason, incest and adultery. And sightings of Boleyn's ghosts have been reported at the Tower as well as in various other locations, including their childhood home in Hever Castle in Kent, which is just down the road, incidentally, from where I live. And it's a beautiful castle, let me tell you. Absolutely stunning. But there is something definitely not right with that building, I'm telling you. In modern times, there have been countless films, TV shows, books, radio shows, which have included ghosts for some of my favourite have been. Right, before we move on to that, also, I don't know if you're aware, but West Ham United's ground, their old ground, Upton Park, its real name is the Bowling Ground. And Tony Blackwell will probably know this if he's watching. But yeah, its actual real name is the Bowling Ground. And the reason it's called the Bowling Ground is because it's named after Anne Boleyn. And there's a pub, I think there's a pub there, or there used to be a pub there that has got some connection with her or something like that. So just a little interesting sideline for you, especially the West Ham fans, if there's any in here tonight. So let's move on and talk about some of my favourite films and TV shows. And now, the 1990 film Ghost, which stars Patrick Swayze, Demi Moore, and Whoopi Goldberg. Now, I, like loads of other people of my age group, absolutely loved this film. Absolutely loved it. It's a romantic film with a bit of a twist, and it's a bit of a ghost story as well. And I have to say, Demi Moore was a bit of a fox in this film, apart from anything else. In this film, Sam Wheat, played by Patrick Swayze, is a banker. Molly Jensen, played by Demi Moore, is an artist, and the two are madly in love. However, when Sam is murdered by friend and corrupt business partner Carl Brunner over a shady business deal, he's left to roam the earth as a powerless spirit. When he learns of Carl's betrayal, Sam must seek the help of a psychic, Oda Mae Brown, who is played by Whoopi Goldberg, to set things right and protect Molly from Carl and his accomplices. And that's basically the story. And it's the story about how Whoopi Goldberg, as a medium, helps him to go to the spirit world and deal with these evil people that are trying to ruin him and his young wife. Now this one is probably my favourite ghost story of all time. It's called The Others, and it's a really, really cool film because at the start of the film, you have got no idea what's going on. It looks like that the woman who's in the film, Nicole Kidman, is living in a haunted house, but it's got a really interesting twist to it. So the film is by Alejandro Amenabar. He's a Spanish guy. It stars Nicole Kidman, Christopher Eccleston, and Fiona Flanagan. It was made in 2001, and it tells the story of a woman named Grace who retires with her children to a mansion on Jersey towards the end of the Second World War, where she's waiting for her husband to come home back from battle. The children have a disease which means they cannot be touched by direct sunlight without being hurt in some way. They will live alone there with oppressive, strange, and almost religious rules until she needs to hire a group of servants for them. Their arrival will accidentally begin to break the rules with unexpected consequences. It turns out that Grace and her children are the ghosts, and this story tells the story from the perspective of the ghosts. So that's why I really like it, because I've never ever seen a film that's been made which tells the story from the perspective of the ghost. And this is what this film does. So if any of you find that interesting, go and check this film out. I don't know where it's available, or even if it is, because it's like over 20 odd years old now, this film, but it's really, really good film. I really, really enjoyed it. Now, another great film is this one, The Shining by Stanley Kubrick. Now, I love Kubrick. I know that some people aren't too keen on him, but I absolutely love him. That film was mad. The train guy cracked me up. Get off my train. Yeah, exactly. And The Shining by Stanley Kubrick stars Jack Nicholson, Shelley Duvall, and Danny Lloyd, and is based on a book by Stephen King. In this film, Jack Nicholson's character, Jack Torrance, is haunted by a persistent writer's block, and the aspiring author and recovering alcoholic Jack Torrance drags his wife Wendy and his gifted son Danny up snow-capped Colorado's secluded Overlook Hotel after taking up a job as an off-season caretaker. As the cavernous hotel shuts down for the season, the manager gives Jack a grand tour, and the facility chef, the aging Mr. Holloran, has a fascinating chat with Danny about a rare psychic gift called The Shining, making sure to warn him about the hotel's abandoned rooms and in particular the off-limits room 237. However, instead of overcoming the dismal creative rut, little by little, Jack starts losing his mind, trapped in an unforgiving environment of seamlessly endless snowstorms and a gargantuan silent prison riddled with strange occurrences and eerie visions. Now the incessant voices inside Jack's head demand sacrifice and are pushing him to commit mass murder. So yeah, this film is absolutely terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. It really is. And he ends up trying to kill his family, but he ends up dying himself. So they manage to escape and get away, thankfully. But yes, yeah, terrifying film. So now this one is a children's comedy TV series called Rent a Ghost, and it used to be on when I was a kid, and it's about a company that hires out ghosts for hauntings and stuff like that. The basic story of the show was that a company rented out ghosts to the public, and some of these ghosts included Timothy Capel, who was a court jester at the court of Queen Matilda, the dreaded tyrant of the 12th century, Hazel McWitch, the ghost of a Scottish witch who was recruited during the rent a potion venture, and Hubert Davenport, a distinguished Victorian gentleman. So yeah, this TV show used to be on sort of late afternoon, early evening on children's TV. And I used to love it. I thought it was hilarious. And they used to have this song or something like along the lines of, if you all need a ghost thing, call Rent a Ghost or something crazy like that. Yeah, it was quite mad, to be quite honest. So the next one. Right, so the next one we've got is, now I've already spoken about this show already. It's called Most Haunted, and I spoke about that when we were talking about Pendle Hill. It's a British paranormal reality television series which originally broadcast on the Living TV channel during the noughties, but now is broadcast only on their YouTube channel. They've got a YouTube channel where they broadcast shows on there. I liked it because they would go onto locations which had a long history of paranormal activity attached to them, and they would carry out paranormal investigations using a variety of traditional methods, as well as having people telling you about the history of the locations, and also they would carry out paranormal tests and so on and so forth. And it would typically, one location, they would be there for 3 nights. So I used to really, really enjoy it when they start doing their investigations. And perhaps the most famous of their shows was a Halloween special, which went to Pendle Hill in 2004. It was absolutely terrifying. It really was. And that was that place I told you about earlier with all the witches and whatnot. Now, next one, let's see. Yeah, here we go. So the next one was Willow the Wisp. And you heard me talking about wisps earlier. And this was a kids' TV show as well, again from my childhood. There was a series of 5-minute cartoons about a group of inhabitants of a forest called Willow the Wisp. The Pendle Hill episode on Most Haunted was amazing, says Stephanie. Yeah, it was incredible. Warren, if you could ask us one question, what would it be? It would be, why hasn't Arteta been sacked yet? There you go. And yeah, so this was a TV show about a group of inhabitants of a forest. Will-o'-the-Wisp is a spirit formed from gas who narrates each story. Other characters include Evil Edna, which is shaped like a TV. You can see her in the top right-hand corner. Mavis, a fairy. There was also the Moog, the Argonauts, strange alien things that flew around in a mushroom. Yeah, so whoever created this show, I reckon they were smoking some serious drugs, because like TVs and people as characters of TVs, like bloody aliens flying around in a mushroom, man, it was seriously off key. Now, the next one is one of my favourite ones. And when I show you the picture, I think you'll know why I really like it. So here we go. It's called The Ghost Whisperer. This series aired between 2005 and 2010, and it followed the life of Melinda Gordon, Jennifer Love Hewitt, who had the ability to see and communicate with ghosts whilst trying to live as normal a life as possible. She is married and owns an antique store. Melinda helps earthbound spirits resolve their problems and cross over into the light or the spirit world. Now, this show was fantastic. I really liked it, and not just because of Jennifer Love Hewitt, although she is serious eye candy, in my opinion, but it was because it was a way that she would help them to overcome whatever it was that was keeping them on the earth and stop them from going to the spirit world and stuff like that. It was just absolutely fantastic. A brilliant story. She could see them, she could talk to them, and she was able to assist them. So yeah, it was fascinating. So yeah, I thought there was another one, but clearly not. Okay, I thought there was another slide, but yeah, so and also in this show, where are we? Her tasks are also difficult, and at times it's a struggle with people who push her away and do not believe in her gift. In addition, the ghosts are mysterious and sometimes menacing at first, and Melinda must use the clues available to her to understand the spirit's needs and to help them, because they're not always immediately obvious what it is that's causing the problem, and they're not able to convey that to her. They're just very frustrated and upset about their inability to move forward. So it was a really, really good series, and I really enjoyed it. So there you go. Yeah, so that's it, guys. If there's any questions that you want to ask, please let me know. Stephen Herringentower, Romance and Gothic Writings, saw a ghost in Barley Churchyard, and also done a Ouija board in the vestry on the side of the church. Was an amazing night. Yeah, I bet it was. Blimey. That must have been really full on. And Joanne says, I've got that song in my head now. Oh dear. I'm sorry about that, Joanne. Yeah, so I hope you enjoyed it. Anyone got any particular requests for the next time I do the next show in 2 weeks' time that you want me to focus on? Please let me know, or let Diesel know, or throw it into the chat if there's anything you want to ask, or if there's a show that you'd like me to do on a particular topic. Please let me know, and I'm happy to do it for you. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed it and it was interesting. I really do. And Joanne says, Yvette screams like a loony. Yes, she does. And Stephanie says, you can just say Stephanie. All right, thank you, Stephanie. Do Bigfoot. Okay, Bigfoot is, or Nessie. Okay, well, yeah, we'll do a couple of shows about those. Haunted objects are interesting. Yeah, because the Nessie and Bigfoot are two really interesting phenomena. They definitely are. So yeah, there's some good ideas there for future shows, definitely. So yeah, guys, I hope you really enjoyed that. Please don't forget to subscribe to Diesel's channel. Put a like on the video for us and share it around. And please don't forget to subscribe to my channel as well, Warren's Team Talk. If you just type in the search bar icon thing on YouTube, Warren's Team Talk, you'll find my channel. That's the logo for it in the bottom right hand corner. You can see there. That would be fantastic. And yeah, and if in the meantime you have any ideas about shows that you'd like me to do, please contact Diesel or contact me and let me know. The email address for my channel is warrensteamtalk@outlook.com. That's warrensteamtalk@outlook.com. If I don't hear anything, I will do I'll do a show about Bigfoot the next time because it's really interesting. Bigfoot and similar creatures, because there's a number of creatures similar to Bigfoot that have been seen all around the world, and there's some really interesting theories about what that is. So yeah, I hope you've enjoyed the show. I've really enjoyed researching it and doing it with you tonight. Yeah, I hope you have a great rest of your day wherever you are in the world, whether it's daytime, lunchtime, or evening time, whatever it is. And thanks very much for coming and watching, and have a great rest of your day. Thanks very much, people. Take care. Bye for now.